Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I am joined by both Backlog Banter Boys, Abram Buhner, Tucker Hazel, to discuss the 5 major first-party reveals in the June Nintendo Direct. I'm posting this the following day. We're still pretty hot off of it, but we're going to just go over the major announcements and how we're feeling about them. I wanted to have a discussion with them just to kind of get some other perspectives, because I haven't really talked to anybody about this Direct yet. So, Abram, I want to start with you with Metroid Prime 4. We're going to start with the Direct close, because I know you have been eagerly anticipating Metroid Prime 4, like most of us. How are you feeling about this game?
Oh my god, I feel extremely good, if you can believe it, Bo. I mean, as I was explaining to Tucker, this is not only a big moment as sort of the culmination of the last literal generation's worth of waiting, it's also sort of, I would say, the beginning of a new era of Metroid Prime 4 speculation, right? Because for a long time, the speculation was, oh god, please let the game still exist somewhere, right? Now it is really, where are we going with this game? Is this game picking up narratively from the other Metroid Prime games? And it seems like it is, considering that Silex is pretty prevalent in that trailer. But we still have a lot of questions in terms of, is this a more open game about exploration and ambiance the way that Prime 1 is, or is it going more in the Metroid Prime 3 direction, which is to say a little bit more linear, a lot more action heavy, and longer, more sort of traditionally Western AAA than Prime 1 is, which is a much more direct translation of 2D Metroid. So I'm really excited to learn more. I don't think that trailer gives us a great indication as to those gameplay questions, but what it does reaffirm is that the game looks unbelievably good. And above all, is just a hey, Abram, stop panicking. The game is coming. It's coming next year. And frankly, that's really all I needed. I'm stoked for it.
Yeah, I think as a closer for this Direct, getting such a big game coming in 2025 is just really reassuring for not only the Switch, just like the gaming industry as a whole right now. Because, like, dude, 2025 is already shaping up to just be insane for everybody, but even especially Nintendo. I mean, we already know about this now and Pokemon Legends EA, and they haven't even announced the Switch 2.
And Donkey Kong.
Now, I do kind of want to go there, and Donkey Kong, of course. I can't forget Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, the goatee next year. But I think one of the main takeaways from this, before I like really delve deep and analyze the footage, I want to get Andre's one for a discussion, I think, in the coming days, is how good this looks. This is coming to Switch 2. I have been very anti, Prime 4 is not going to be cross-gen. I'm a firm believer of that now. I was thinking that Prime 4 was going to come out this year, I'll be honest. But seeing this game in action, this is probably the best looking game Nintendo's ever made, right?
I think it's definitely true. We were saying that last year with Prime Remastered, and this just looks like, because it's built from the ground up to take advantage of higher resolution environments and more spectacle, and greater detail on the enemies and things, that it's just it's designed to look great. And of course, Remastered did look great, but that was a touch up of an older game. So yeah, absolutely, I think this is the best looking game they've done. And I don't know if I'm on the exact same page of this being cross-gen for release. I think my mind more so goes towards, because it does look so good, there's a chance that for higher resolution and frame rate, they do a re-release of it at some other point. But I just don't think that, because it looks so good, and I'm confident that what we saw was Switch 1 footage, that it is even necessary to release it cross-gen.
I mean, the cross-gen question really, your interpretation of what it means for Prime 4 to be a cross-gen game, I think, hinges in some part on your understanding of the backwards compatibility situation in the first place, right? I mean, are we talking about a scenario where, in your opinion, Bo, where there is a Switch 2 SKU of this game on store shelves, or is it just sort of a PS4 Pro scenario wherein you boot that game on your Switch 2 and there's like an intrinsic amount of technical benefit you get from being on that hardware?
Yeah, I'm expecting a SKU at this point. It depends on when it releases. It depends on when Switch 2 comes out. But if Switch 2 comes out, let's say March, like I'm expecting, or maybe April or May, I don't think this game ships before then. I think this is a game that could be a very impressive technical showcase. Once again, already looking like the best game Nintendo's ever made visually. Why not ship it on Switch 2? Market it for Switch 2. You're still giving it to the Switch 1 audience that you promised it to 7 years ago, but I think this could be a showstopper for Switch 2. And I think, I mean, a big part of my debates for the past year with Andres Restart and other people, of why Switch 2 in 2025 makes more sense, is that they hadn't had that big showstopper game like Breath of the Wild was for NX, We have that now. We have this game now that they could technically be like low-key marketing Switch 2 before it's even announced with. So I think that's possible.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that I err more on the side of this being like a February game or early March and then late March or April, because it says 2025 and that could necessarily mean anywhere in 2025, of course, but I think that makes sense as this like very close to the launch of the next system's swan song for the next for Switch.
My feeling about the release date is that I think that this is sort of not that dissimilar from how we saw a lot of Xbox games get windows, then we hear from Tamor and the coalition is already targeting X date for E-Day, but are giving themselves room if there's slippage. I mean, that's just sort of a issue across the industry right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if Retro has a date in mind, but they're just keeping that year open to be safe. I did look up Bo because Tucker and I had mentioned this in our discussion, but didn't have the answer yet. We wanted to know when Breath of the Wild was confirmed for Switch. And I'm getting this here from a Reddit article from the user Sarish, I think, and they source here from a Kotaku. In 2016, a financial briefing from Nintendo announced that the game was coming simultaneously to Wii U and NX. And that's in 2016. So there had been many, many showings of the game. Breath of the Wild is only a Wii U title. Prior to that, there had been dated trailers prior to that with the 2015 trailer and various things. So I also don't think it's impossible that Nintendo is saying, look, we're going to talk about this game right now in the capacity that we can, which is it as a Switch 1 title, but then we're going to leave this space for ourselves at the right moment to announce that SKU. And I don't think the SKU is impossible even in a backwards compatible Switch 2 scenario, because you got to remember, Twilight Princess is obviously on GameCube and Wii. Now there's more factors there, right? I mean, you've got a very different controller, you've got other considerations, but they were fine letting you, in theory, play that GameCube disc on your Wii. Again, apples and oranges to an extent. But I agree with you. I think that this trailer does put more gasoline on the cross-gen fire. But I'm just sort of like a Metroid in the hand is better than two Metroids in the bush type of guy, Bo. And I ultimately am just very pleased that what we have here is at minimum the best looking game on Switch, because I simply do not think that Nintendo secretly put Switch 2 footage in front of us. I think that if there is a Switch SKU, it's going to look even better than this.
No, but here's the thing, is this does put fuel on the fire of people thinking that this is Switch 2 footage, because it does look really, really good. And there's absolutely going to be people saying, well, this looks too good for Switch, like they were doing with Tears of the Kingdom, and like they were doing with...
Mario and Rabbids.
Mario and Rabbids, yeah. That was a really interesting one. That was 2 years ago. But also, another small thing for putting fuel on the fire, Bo and I were talking a little bit about this, on the official Nintendo trailers on their YouTube channel, the only one with a not red logo is Prime 4. All the other ones have this same Nintendo red logo. And
Sorry, what do you mean?
The Prime 4 thumbnail for the trailer on the official Nintendo of America YouTube account has a white Nintendo logo in the corner. Everything else has a red logo. And this is colored button theory level stuff, but it does put fuel on that fire, absolutely.
You know, I have to bring some sense in this conversation, because I know that unchecked, you two have talked a lot of garbage about Prime 1 and, you're here to talk about Switch 2. I just want to make it explicitly clear to the Botox Games audience that I'm excited for Prime 4 because it's Prime 4. And Tucker...
We're both excited for Prime 4.
No, but I deserve it more. That's the difference.
Yes.
I think all three of us are excited. You're truly excited, but
exactly.
You deserve it more. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I am excited because I'm excited to see what Retro has been able to do to modernize Metroid Prime. And I'm still excited to see Prime 2 and 3 hopefully come over. I'm kind of expecting a September Direct, where I think that could happen, to be honest. If not, I will play them on Wii if I must.
August is open right now, Bo.
There's also only one game in October, which is kind of weird.
Well, doesn't Fantasy Life count, or is that not in October?
They're not publishing it, but that is an exclusive. You are right. Now, before we move on from Metroid Prime, I do want to get one final thing here. How are we feeling about this title? A lot of people were like, oh, it's going to be called Metroid Prime 4 Extinction, Metroid Prime 4, I don't even know. Some sort of corruption type word. Beyond. How do you feel about Beyond?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't put a whole lot of stock in a name like this. You would assume that Beyond is going to suggest something, whether that's suggesting narratively that we're going to move beyond sort of the already established plot lines and we're going to a different galaxy. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity
or maybe structurally that it's more open, which is some of the things that have been hinted about this game, is that it is a bit wider scope of a game, and that obviously we're conspiracy brain reading into a title that more than likely only just indicates vibes. I mean, Beyond doesn't really indicate much of anything, so it could be anything really.
Let me just say, the last thing I'll say about this is because, to your point, Tucker, some of the reporting about this game has been, it's a much more open title than the past Metroid games, which even at their most open are not especially open, obviously. I do think it's intriguing that the very small bit of combat we did see in this trailer is still traditional Metroid Prime lock-on combat, and it looks like the way that you're firing Samus's arm cannon is not that dissimilar from past titles. Bo, I was saying, what if there's a world wherein you kind of like aim down sights off Samus's arm cannon? It's a more traditional FPS in terms of like the rate of fire and the way that the combat actually flows. It doesn't seem to be that way. So I'm curious if there's going to be these larger structural changes. My overarching point is that whether this is a modernization of Metroid Prime, or whether it's just a sort of continuation of the existing formula, whether it's more action emphasized like Prime 3 or more sort of ambiance focused like Prime 1, if you're on the right side of history, this formula is basically timeless anyway, so what do you really have to change?
Regardless, there's going to be a lot of happy people. So I will be happy for those people, even if it ends up not being for me. But I am optimistic that it will end up being for me.
We don't have to stop talking about retro, though, technically, because Donkey Kong Country Returns HD is probably also developed by Retro. They did the port of Tropical Freeze. Really no reason why they aren't also doing this. Interesting that this team has been basically just doing ports and remakes for, a decade now. But what do you think about Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, Bo?
I kind of expected this. I actually talked about it in a video a couple of days ago, that this makes a lot of sense for either this holiday or early next year. I think, Abram, you were also talking about it as well as a unfortunate reality that could happen, because a lot of us have been wanting that new 2D Donkey Kong game. We're definitely not getting that anytime soon, I would imagine. So my only takeaway is, well, I have two takeaways. First of all, it's a very good game. I'm excited to replay it. I haven't played it since it came to 3DS. My other takeaway, though, is that I guess I have three takeaways. 2025 game. Glad that we're getting some like actual roadmap into the next year with dates. But also, this is the only remake, remaster, port, whatever you want to call it, that they announced.
Yeah, which is really nice.
It's very surprising considering the past couple of directs. Yeah. And I do think paints a picture for what like I said, might be a September direct. That's a lot of remakes and ports announced, because there's so much stuff we're expecting that we still just have not seen. So I feel like the Switch still has so much juice in it. Even if it is more ports and remakes, like I feel like there's a lot to show for next year.
Well, but let us paint you a more positive picture, because we have a theory about Donkey Kong Country Returns HD, is that this is the Pikmin 3 Deluxe. And it seems like Nintendo has been pretty consistent about bringing back interest in a series through a collection, through a remake, through a port, whatever, and then using that momentum, especially with a cross-media and like plushies and other merch push, to revitalize the series leading into the launch of a next game. And so I think Abram and I are on the same page of this does not indicate anything about the less likelihood of a new 2D Donkey Kong game coming soon. If anything, I think that the two of us would say that it increases the likelihood of that. And we could even see a new 2D Donkey Kong next year, coinciding more closely with the, or maybe not next year, because this game is actually coming out in January of 2025. But off the heels of that, within the next 18 months after that game comes out, I think a new 2D Donkey Kong, coinciding with the release of that game and the opening of the Donkey Kong expansion for the theme park, I think a new 2D Donkey Kong is absolutely within the next year and a half.
Now that you mention it, that's actually a great point, because it reminds me of when Nintendo very quickly announced and released New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, and then 1 month later announced Mario Maker 2. I could see a scenario where they're like, well, if we're releasing a new 2D Donkey Kong game next year, let's just go ahead and get this out real quick. We might as well. That's interesting. I could see that.
Yeah. And then Donkey Kong could be a holiday game or an early 2026 game.
Sure. Abram, how are you feeling as the resident Donkey Kong fan here?
I mean, I'm the only one on this panel who has recorded videos of themselves climbing trees to play DK bongos and sort of like some sort of perverted ritual to summon a Donkey Kong game. I don't think I played hard enough, because this is what we got. But yeah, I largely echo both of your sentiments, just in that this is a very good game. I don't think it's nearly as good as Tropical Freeze, but it is a very good game that I'm looking forward to replaying and kind of, as Tucker was saying to me earlier, sort of getting rid of the issues intrinsic to both the Wii and 3DS versions of the game and just having this sort of definitive take on Returns. I also think that there's obviously much more going on with Donkey Kong than just this. I don't think this is just a calendar filler. You look at the prevalence of characters like Funky Kong in the Lego sets. I mean, why is Funky Kong there? Why was he such a big presence in the film? Why is Donkey Kong the one getting the next theme park expansion when it could, and in some people's minds maybe should be Zelda or something? I think that there's obviously something more at play, and I'm curious for your take on this, Bo. Let's operate on the assumption that Retro made this game. Obviously, it's way too early to know, but let's say it is. How long ago do you think they finished this? Because I kind of take this as a title that's been sat on for a very long time.
I wonder about that, because being one of Nintendo's only Western studios, usually Western studios are a little bit more leaky. I feel like we maybe would have heard about that. Like Metroid Prime Remastered, we knew about for years. I don't think there's really ever been any insider buzz about Country Returns HD. It's very possible, though. This could be a game that they've been sitting on. Man, they might have just whipped it up at the same time as Tropical Freeze. Like, actually. I'm not fully joking. They could have been sitting on it for quite a while.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks nice. I haven't looked at Returns 3D in a long time, but it looks like a solid up-res, maybe some new texture work, right? Nothing crazy. Maybe like a Luigi's Mansion 2 HD style remaster.
I think it's actually more significant than that. I mean, if you're looking at like the fur texture in Donkey Kong, I can't remember back to the Wii game too well, so your audience is going to have to fact check us on this, but I almost wonder if this game has been in some way put into the engine or the assets of Tropical Freeze.
I think that is his Tropical Freeze model.
Yeah, I was going to say, they definitely at the very least took his model, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And that makes me wonder, again, maybe it's not Retro. Maybe Retro simply provided the necessary resources to another one of Nintendo's teams to do this. We don't know, and we won't know until the game is preloaded and data mined. But I would wonder just about what this game was initially intended to do. Because this in January 2025, I don't know. I mean, again, that's when the theme park is opening here stateside now, and the theme park was delayed from 2024 to 2025. So there's potentially a reality when a couple months ago the theme park looked like it was going to hit this year, and this was going to be the August game. Who knows?
That's possible. Yeah, I think that's actually very likely. And here is my pie in the sky Donkey Kong theory. Get hype, Abram Buner hands on his chest and climbs a tree moment.
Sure.
Is that much like what we saw with the release of the Mario movie, leading into what we would consider maybe an inordinate amount of Mario-related games over the course of the last year and a half. I think that they realized the potential that this cross-media push for a series can have, and I think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think that the DKC Returns HD port in January, open the park a couple months later, DK spinoff halfway through the year, the later part of the year, new DK game at the beginning of 2026. I think that when they have a big push for either a theme park or a film, that they are going to quadruple down on an IP and make sure that the market is saturated with plushies and multiple titles in multiple genres on shelves. And so I think that this is just the beginning. And I think that DK ports and collections and spin-offs and new games I think they're coming. And I think that they're going to come hot and heavy over the course of the next 2 years.
Yeah, we don't really need to get into it too much here, but with Zelda, a lot of people have been waiting for Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. I stopped expecting those in 2022. At this point, I think they're saving them for when the movie comes out. I think that is absolutely what Nintendo's going to start doing. Whenever a movie's coming out, they're just going to go crazy and release as many titles as possible. As we're seeing with Mario, which can segue into our next discussion here, Mario and Luigi Brothership. I keep wanting to call it Brotherhood. This game came out of nowhere. Literally, I did not think that they would do another Mario RPG, which was, I'll be honest, my first kind of like negative thought was like, oh, another Mario RPG, really? But when you actually look at the game, we don't know who's making it, I don't believe yet, but when you actually look at this game, the art style, the character designs, the new gameplay mechanics, like this game looks really good, and more importantly than that, it's a new game. I don't think anybody would have expected a new Mario and Luigi, let alone a Mario and Luigi game at all. So what is your guys' takes on this? I think this was, while once again I'm very burnt out on Mario RPGs and just Mario universe games in general, this game was a fantastic opener.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the 100% surprise of the Direct. We will talk a little bit when we get to Zelda. There are elements of that we had kind of been keyed into before, but this is a major surprise, not only because we have been such in the rut of Mario RPGs. I mean, over the course of the last 2 full years, we will have gotten three, or no, we would have gotten four technically within the course of a 2 year time span, from Sparks of Hope to 1 year later Super Mario RPG to half a year later A Thousand Year Door to half a year after that Brothership. They've been really going hard on it. So we didn't expect any Mario RPG because they already put out three of them recently. But then also the series is not only dead because it had two remakes at the end of last generation, but the studio that made those games, made all of those games, perished because of the underperformance of the remakes that they made. They committed way too many resources to that, and they didn't turn out well because they were at the end of the generation. And so nothing about the current landscape of Nintendo or their development team structure indicated that a Mario and Luigi game would be coming in the next 3 years. And now we're getting one, and it's coming this year. And I agree. I think this game looks fantastic. I think the art style is obviously a complete reinvention. That cell shade looks awesome. The animations are so fluid. They are really going for an expressiveness, which of course they've done in the previous ones, but with this cell shaded 3D style. I mean, there's an animation where the two of them turn to like this spinning umbrella that has like their eyes on it. I'm like, that's just so creative, and the worlds look expansive and fun to explore. It looks like there's a bigger emphasis on platforming. I think this game looks fantastic, and I can't wait to play it. And it'll be my first real Mario and Luigi experience, which I'm just super excited for.
Abram, who do you think is making this game?
I'm gonna be honest, Bo. I really don't know. I mean, a friend of ours was talking about sort of the crossover in talent between Alpha Dream and RT Piazza, I think is how you pronounce it, which is the team that is in large part responsible for Mario RPG Remake. But that sort of introduces a question of team size. It introduces a question of timeline. And I don't really think it is, the more I reflect on it, super realistic that RT Piazza made this game by themselves. And I don't think that they reinvigorated Alpha Dream. That's certainly not the case. I think that this is really the biggest question around this game.
We would have heard about that.
Yeah, we would have heard it. That's not the sort of thing you can sort of keep quiet. Now, Bo, do you think there's a chance that this is a rare look at an internally developed Mario RPG?
By one of the EPD teams?
I mean, why not?
Maybe. I don't know which one would do it. I know this sounds crazy considering they're already workhorses. I wouldn't be shocked, like absolutely shocked, if it's Intelligent Systems. They already have that pedigree with Mario RPGs. They haven't made a new game, a new Mario RPG since Origami King, and I imagine Thousand Year Door did not take that full 4 years of development. So
that's possible. Interesting thing about Intelligent Systems is they're on such a skewed timeline. We have no idea what their development cycle actually is, because apparently Engage was done like 3 years ago. Apparently a Fire Emblem 4 remake that was not announced today has been done for multiple years. And there is such a weird timeline of all of their games that you're right, it's not impossible. I think it's unlikely given just how many things they have to juggle currently, but my guess is that it's a new team that they haven't worked with before. And maybe that is ex-Alpha Dream devs that ended up creating a new studio that ends up creating something like this. It may be in cooperation with Arte Piazza, but I don't think that Arte Piazza can primarily handle this because they just put out a game last year. And that was a game that took quite a bit of effort because it's not, unlike Thousand Year Door, that's a complete reimagining of that game. The physics are different, the all the graphics are different, totally new models and everything. So I don't think it's Arte Piazza. I mean, it's possible they're helping with it, but my guess is a new team. And I, of course, there's no basis in that. But I just, when you pick up all the other options, it's like, it doesn't quite feel right for any of the other ones.
It's also important to note that Arte Piazza, I'm just looking here on their Wikipedia page, this is cited as of 2021, they only had 31 employees. Now you can imagine that they've probably scaled up significantly over the course of the last 3 years, but whether they could take on a game like this is really yet to be seen. I simply don't know. I don't know who else Nintendo could give this game to, if not either taking a look at it internally, giving it to a team like Arte Piazza, or as you're saying, Bo, simply giving it to Intelligent Systems. And I wonder how that would sort of affect the flavor of the game if Intelligent Systems also made this. I mean, obviously, none of us here are massive Mario RPG fans. So it's sort of difficult, I would say, from my perspective, to really get into like writing level nuance as to how Mario RPG deviates from Paper Mario. To me, they seem quite similar. It's always seemed like an intrinsic issue. Um, so there's a case that if this was intelligent systems, that this might be sort of a Paper Mario game in the Mario and Luigi framework. And maybe the reality is those things aren't that different. Maybe the reality, by the same token, maybe to the big Mario RPG fans, they can feel a difference. I guess we're going to find out in a couple months. I don't know. I guess that's the short answer, Bo. I don't know.
That was a long answer.
The interesting thing about Art Piazza is that I am under the belief that they're going to make Super Mario RPG 2. That game did really well. I think they will just make another game with Gino and Mallow. I think that's in the pipeline.
My theory is a Earthbound remake in that style.
Sure, that'd be really cool. Another final thing on Mario and Luigi Brothership. Just really cool to see another franchise that has been absent on the Switch come back. We are really at a point where like basically everything has been represented except for like a new 2D Donkey Kong game, except for Tomodachi Life. So just seeing this one that like I don't think anybody expected to get a Switch entry. I don't know. That's just a feel good moment, I feel like, for the Switch library.
But I got one more. Put this in your proverbial pipe and smoke it, because I'm just coming up with this on the spot. Is there a chance that Camelot did this?
They've done RPGs.
That I don't think they have the chops to make a game that looks this good. I'm gonna be honest.
But you mean in terms of what, gameplay? Because visually they make no.
Aces is pretty.
I'm getting
impressive.
mixed with next
I mean,
level.
you got to think about.
Yeah.
Aces does look
think
good.
about
Super Rush is
Super
next.
Rush is what, 2021 or is that 22? 21.
That's 21.
No.
So that's 3 years. I mean, I'm just trying to think through in my head what teams have RPG experience, and obviously Camelot has both RPG experience and Mario experience.
You're making a very good case. You're making a very good case.
It's a theory to explore, at least. I mean, the only thing I'll just say in terms of the actual game itself, I've not played a ton of Mario and Luigi. Bowser's Inside Story is my favorite. It's one I played the most of, and I think that those games are compelling because their overworlds are a lot more rich with Mario-style platforming challenges and puzzles and just more exploration than the Paper Mario series is, even more than Origami King. So from that metric, I'm excited, and I don't really know how that part of the gameplay really squares with who's developing the game. Part of why I think it could be intriguing if this was internally developed and you had a more platforming minded approach to this game, but that is maybe just a pipe dream. I'm gonna put my money on Camelot. That's my new theory.
All right, Camelot. I put on a new team, but where do you put your money?
Man, I don't know. I'm really up in the air. I would say internal, maybe in some internal team, pre-existing.
All right,
team.
3 very different answers.
I think Camelot's cooking a Mario sports game for next year. Still,
I would agree with that.
I think it's Studio 2 and Studio S making Mario Baseball.
That's also possible. All right. Before we get to the final good thing, well, both of these are exciting, but one of them's less exciting. Let's talk about Super Mario Party Jamboree. Now,
Yippee.
I'll be honest. I love both Mario Party games on Switch. Super Mario Party gets a lot of flack for some reason. I think it's a great game. Mario Party Superstars, even better. Super Mario Party Jamboree looks really good.
Yeah.
I hate the title. Why is it called Jamboree? That is a word that should be off limits. In any
why
titling.
Why does that upset you so much?
Why is it called? That's such a stupid word. I don't know. It's just a stupid word.
You know what's funny? This is the Mario Party equivalent of Melee and Brawl. Like, it's just another word that means like fight, and this is another word that means a party. Jamboree. I agree. I think this game looks great. I'm not a Mario Party guy, but everything they showed there, from the visuals to the minigame variety to the board background quality and everything, which was never in question, and the variety of new modes they added, this looks like the ultimate Switch Mario Party game, learning from 3 games in the past that they've done, or even more than that, where people are like, I don't quite like this, I don't quite like that. And this is taking, it seems like, the best from all of those. So, of course, we'll have to wait and see what the depth of these different modes is, what the variety of the boards actually feels like, because I think they said 5 or 6, which is still not a massive number, but it's fine. There could be things that hold it back in reality when we actually get our hands on the game, but everything that was shown in this trailer shows to me that they are learning from different things and taking steps to the future, especially in that 20-player online mode, which looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, my biggest reservation for this is seeing more of the mini games and actually analyzing the trailer, because it looks like it's requiring the Joy-Con again, which is probably one of the only issues I have with Super Mario Party. Maybe that's just for certain modes, I'm not too sure. But you're right, they're really taking a lot of lessons from the past couple of Mario parties where we have these 5 new boards. We only saw, I think, a deep dive on like 2 of them. There's this one like Mario Kart board where you're in go-karts. I think that's an awesome idea. There's this one mall map. So they're doing interesting things with the new boards, but then also for the people that will inevitably complain, saying these aren't OG Mario Party boards, they're adding 2 OG Mario Party boards. So we're getting 7 boards in this game, which is the most we've had in a very long time. Looks like there's a lot of variety, and like you said, that Koopathlon mode, 20 player online, that just seems like it's gonna be a lot of fun. So it's a Mario Party game. It's like you don't really get that excited for it, but the reality is I'm gonna play this game a lot and have a lot of fun with it. How about you, Abram?
Yeah, I was saying to Tucker that to me, I bet Nintendo recognizes Mario Party for what it is, which is just a safe, repeatable win. In terms of critical success, in terms of pleasing fans, the sort of vocal minority of Mario Party fans notwithstanding, and then just obviously selling a boatload. So I fall into the camp of sort of fair weather Mario Party fans who do just enjoy the games. I even do enjoy a lot of these sort of experimental 3DS and Wii U titles. My biggest issue with Super Mario Party is that it sort of felt like it sacrificed depth for breadth in terms of, you play the river mode once or twice and it's cool, and then you kind of have seen all that mode has to offer. So my number one hope going into Jamboree, which I like just purely because I like the word Jamboree, and I hope the next one's called Hootenanny. I I just really hope that in these various modes, these sort of gimmick boards in these side offerings, that there's actually a good sense of replayability to them, because I think that's the code that the first Super Mario Party couldn't quite crack. And I also do think, if I'm remembering back to the trailer, they said something effective, and some of the mini games use the Joy-Con, and we see that. I would imagine there's going to be certain modes cordoned off for motion control play, and the rest are kind of normal.
Yeah, which for me is the ideal balance. I think that actually one of my biggest critiques with Superstars was that they were all, obviously because they were pulling from older minigames, does make sense, but they weren't able to take advantage of the unique hardware. I think that some of the more interesting ones in Super Mario Party, maybe not the best minigames, but I think the fact that they did use the Joy-Con in the ways that the Joy-Con are able to do that no other controllers could. This is exactly what I want. Actually, it's very similar to why I loved WarioWare Move It so much, is that unlike Get It Together, that really utilized the system's hardware and unique possibility. But I think that the ideal scenario is that a lot of the games or the mini games don't use motion controls, but some of them do, and there's a significant amount of both, so you're getting the best of both worlds. And the variety is what makes Mario Party so strong and interesting, and using motion control and unique Switch hardware allows that to be in wider breadth. So I think that's what is happening, and I think that is, again, a learning from past mistakes. Super Mario Party leaned too heavily into new stuff and didn't take any of the old, and had too much motion control. Then Super Mario Party was only the old and no motion controls and all old boards. You mix those together, you push forward the online a little bit. It seems like this could end up being the ultimate Mario Party game for Switch, if not ever. I mean, who knows, really? Mario Party game players are very fickle. But I'm very excited for this, and I think there's a very good possibility that this is the best Mario Party game Switch.
Last thing I'll say, and I actually just looked up a breakdown here of boards per game across
BBG.
The entire series.
Yeah.
And it seems like the game that had the most boards is actually the first game, which had 8 boards.
What the heck?
So we're not too far off from that with 7. Yeah. Although I will say, with this game having a sort of unusually long development cycle for an ND Cube title, couldn't we have like 10 boards? I mean, could we not have 12? Like, ultimately, especially if you're remastering boards, I don't understand why I wouldn't just have a portion of your team working diligently on continuing to bring forward and remastering more and more boards. Because to me, that's one of the big pain points of Mario Party titles. You just get sick of the boards. So I don't really get why we have to remain in this 5 to 8 realm in terms of board count.
Maybe this will finally be the fabled Mario Party that actually gets DLC on Switch.
That'd be nice.
Because people have been begging for that.
But it also does feel a little bit weird. This is a Switch game. The next system's next year. Would DLC for this Mario Party game really make sense post-launch of the next system? I don't know. But yeah, I agree that that's my biggest criticism is like, really? But also, apparently, that's just something they can't do because they never done it before. So obviously, there's something going wrong in that area. Who knows?
All right, we saved the best for last, obviously. The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts on this. I have been very pessimistically expecting a Hyrule Warriors game, and I still think there will be a Warriors game next year, although I think the likelihood of Xenoblade Warriors just went up a little bit, so I'm very happy. But The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, new 2D Zelda game where you play as Zelda. Really cool how it was explained by Aonuma that they're once again, he loves breaking conventions, man. That man's always talked about we wanted to rethink the conventions of Zelda. So it kind of feels like they took a lot of elements of like Tears of the Kingdom and like all the object manipulation you can do in that game, but just implemented it into a 2D Zelda game where you're copying literally, I think, every object in the game, it seems like, or almost every object. Even he kind of joked in the video about like, I'm not sure how many there are. Like, it seems like there's a lot of possibility of how many items and enemies you can copy with your rod and then use them to your advantage, solving puzzles, defeating enemies. We're getting a single-player Zelda game where you play as Zelda, very long requested from the fan base. Reusing the map from A Link to the Past, apparently. I did not know that when I was reacting. I feel like that's a little bit weird. Not sure how I feel about them reusing the gorgeous art style from Link's Awakening. I feel like having this, getting this its own identity would have been nice, but those two gripes aside, I cannot wait for this. I think this is like literally the best case scenario for a game releasing this year that they could have announced, and it looks better than I expected it to. I was expecting maybe a multiplayer Zelda game or a remade Zelda game, or like I said, Hyrule Warriors. I'm very happy with what we saw of this.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't share those same gripes about the art style. I think that that is a development reality that, for me, signals that okay. We assume that Grezzo is making this. They've made 2D Zelda games in the past. They made Link's Awakening. They made Triforce Heroes, so they have experience in this area. They've worked very closely with EPD3 because they also did Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask 3D. So they have a lot of Zelda experience. And so Abram and I think we've told you this, Bo, we're like, look, they've been quiet for so long. Miitopia was what, 3 years ago at this point. What the heck is going on? We wanted them making a new 2D Zelda game. But this, for me, it's a development reality thing. They have never made an original with new mechanics 2D Zelda game or Zelda game period. And reusing that engine allows them to focus much more on the gameplay side of things. And so I think that is just a balance that allows the effort to go into the development of that ecosystem and using the one and the copying and the puzzle solving and placing these new puzzles and new mechanics into a apparently pre-existing map. I think that is very unlikely that the map is solely just a recreation of the Link to the Past map. From what we see of the key art and a little bit of the game footage, it does look like that it is building on top of that. But there are those rifts. Zelda is notorious for having other like dark worlds, low rule, things like that. So, and we going through those rifts, maybe there are these external, more dungeony, puzzly areas that are blocked up things that are like floating in a purple void or whatever. I think that this looks amazing. And a original 2D Zelda game is something we've been missing for so long. There's so many ways you can slice it of, okay, this kind of counts, this kind of doesn't count, but this is unambiguously new mechanics. The new world is kind of ambiguous. I kind of going against myself, but yeah, I think it looks fantastic, and I can't wait. And this is the big game of this year.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this game, if you can believe it. The Link's Awakening art style is interesting because I think that it is not a super effective art style if your goal is to try to immerse your player in a world. I think where it was effective in terms of Link's Awakening was to emulate, obviously, this toy box feel, and I think that had a sort of one-off charm. I think when you reuse it, it loses a little bit of that. Like, I would love to see a more expressive Zelda. You know, like we see this big epic fight between Link and Ganondorf, and you don't really feel the stakes when they're these little silly guys. However, I don't necessarily view this strictly as a decision made to reuse resources. I think it's also a decision made because of I think what are going to become the inherent limits of this echo mechanic. One of the big criticisms of Link's Awakening in 2019 is that the game is set on a grid. It doesn't actually take Link's Awakening off of the grid that the Game Boy title had. Now, you have to imagine that if this game is about these very curated puzzles, that grid system is going to be critical in how you grab things with your wand and how you place them. And I would imagine that this is a game that has a more curated sense of puzzle solving than the open-ended puzzle solving of the open air Zelda titles, even though it retains that spirit. So I would imagine on a design level, the people at EPD3 and then the executives, the higher ups at Grezza looked at it and said, look, we already have this tile-based Zelda engine and system. This would be perfect for allowing players to very easily pick up individual items and place them somewhere else. So,
and make them very clear what is what. I mean, there's no like, oh, is this too close to that for me to grab it? The size diff, because you're right. Everything's like tile sizes. This is a bed that is 2 tiles long. This is a plant that is 1 tile wide. Like that sort of placing and picking up, I think you're absolutely right, is very clear. There's no mistakes of I am picking this up because it's not a pot that's next to a bed, but the pot's really small. Like the scale and the size difference, because this is a cartoony tile-based game, that's absolutely a big part of that. I totally agree.
So I think that's probably a lot of the reason why we're seeing this art style again, on top of what Tucker is saying, these sort of intrinsic development realities. So to me, it makes sense, although I do think that there's a dimension of sort of immersion that I lose in this version of Hyrule. As to reusing the map, even if they are reusing the map, we already seen that there's a lot of puzzles that rely quite heavily on a sort of vertical sense. And we're also seeing 2D areas, which obviously are not in A Link to the Past. So if this is the same map, it's going to necessarily have to be a heavily retooled one. And if this is just a fan theory for now, I wouldn't put a ton of stock in this being the Link to the Past map and anything really beyond aesthetic and general placement. I mean, think about the worries we had about the Hyrule and Tears of the Kingdom and then the extent to which it was changed in Breath of the Wild. I don't view that as an intrinsic negative. I don't really view anything we see about this game as an intrinsic negative, which is sort of part of what's required to make a puzzle game like this. And so to that end, I'm very excited to get in there and kind of learn the ropes of the echo mechanic. And I'm really looking forward to it. Although I do wonder if this will perfectly scratch the itch for a 2D Zelda game for me or not. I think that there's a chance that it doesn't, but it still remains a very cool, very exciting game all the same.
It's going to be really frustrating over the next decades when people try to say this isn't a mainline Zelda game.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely going to happen.
Totally. That is going to happen because it has a weird mechanic and you don't play as Link.
Yeah.
But this is a mainline Zelda game. And I mean, it just made me think. I made a tweet about how, remember when Tears of the Kingdom was the last major Switch game? And like maybe optically it kind of was overall, but like, come on. I do want to clarify, like, Link's Awakening's art style is beautiful, and I'm okay with them reusing it, but yeah, this will certainly be more optimized, and hopefully, and they'll, iron out some of the frame rate issues. I don't know. It's just like we've been so long without a 2D Zelda game. It would have been nice to see a new art style, but now I don't think there's any chance they use it a third time. So now when Grezza makes their fully original 2D Zelda game that probably comes out in 5 or 6 years, it'll have a new art style. We'll get that Mario Wonder moment finally, and I don't know. I think this game looks really cool. I'm excited to see what we can really do with that echo mechanic. Being able to like almost capture enemies and use them is really cool, and it should just lead to a lot of interesting situations that we haven't really seen in a 2D Zelda game before. Even if we just got, let's say, this exact game, but you play as Link, like that would have been hype. I would have been excited for it, but it would have just been another 2D Zelda game. So they're actually doing something new with it, and I really appreciate that. I've seen some people in my live stream chat were like, oh, I don't like that you play as Zelda and have this weird mechanic. I just wanted to play as Link. I prefer that they did something different with this, and I'm excited it's coming out so soon. I mean, this is September. This isn't even like really almost a holiday game. This is almost a summer game, so we're not gonna have to wait long to play it. I can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait. I think that what's interesting actually is you can pair this very nicely with Princess Peach Showtime, which is a game that we all played and thought was at best maybe okay. But the idea of taking the heroines of their classic series and putting them in the forefront with totally different mechanics, I think is actually very important for bringing these characters more to the forefront of their game design, which is something that had only happened in part in the past. And I'm very glad that Zelda does not play the same as Link. I'm glad that this is not Link. I think that gives this game an identity that even if you can say, okay, the map is based off of Link to the Past and the visual style is based off of Link's Awakening 2019, this is a game where you play as Zelda. The mechanics are very different. And so regardless of the world below you, actually, I think, Abram, you made a very apt comparison to Tears of the Kingdom. You're going to be placing crap all over here. You're going to be jumping on top of the trees. Much like Tears of the Kingdom, the map almost barely matters. And I think that that's actually kind of fun. And it might make it kind of interesting to be like, oh, I'm just like climbing on top of the castle or these hills that used to just be set dressing. And I've recognized them from these previous games, but now I can, jump around and play stuff on top of them. So I think that everything about this game really, really sells me on it. And so I'm absolutely looking forward to it.
Last thing I'll add very quickly, I would not be surprised if you do also play as Link in this game. Essentially, the trailer begins with him dropping into some sort of other dimension, right? And now there's a chance that Zelda goes down there herself to navigate and solve puzzles, but there's also, I would say, an equally large chance that down there you play more traditional 2D Zelda style encounters or dungeons or whatever. Now, maybe they would have said that in this breakdown with Aonuma. I don't know. But even if that's not the case...
No, Nintendo loves hiding a major element of their game for the second or third trailer. So I think that's actually very possible. The idea that Link's like kind of trapped in a low roll style area that is a mirror version of the map. You play as him. There are maybe that's where specific dungeons are, things like that. I think that's actually very, very likely.
I hadn't thought about that at all, but that's... Abram, that better happen.
Yeah, neither
that better happen in this game now, because that is a fantastic idea, and that is a recipe for success for this game. Oh,
it seems like an obvious idea, so I'm actually not that worried about it not being in there.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of that, but you're totally right. That's a slam dunk. And I imagine that's something they could reveal very close to release in a September Direct. All right, any high-level thoughts on this Direct that you guys want to get out before we end up here? How are you feeling? Just as Nintendo fans, specifically like in terms of their first-party pipeline, how are you both feeling? Abram, we'll start with you.
I am feeling quite good, for lack of anything more specific than that. I mean, ultimately, as I said to Tucker, I made an error that I shouldn't have made earlier this year, which was doubting Nintendo would turn it around in the second half, because they did it in 2021, they did it in 2023, and now they're doing it in 2024, filling out this slate with really interesting-looking games. I still remain... entrenched in my anti-Mario universe position, so sadly I am going to have to continue to be loud about this point through the rest of the year. But I am very...
We're like 3.5 directs in a row where they've mostly announced Mario titles.
Yeah, and as I was saying to Tucker earlier, Bo, I think that that's partially a casualty of Switch 2 being delayed and a lot of that IP variety being on the next system, and them obviously not having that ready to talk about. Because if you look at a time period like 2003 to 2005 or 2016, 2017, these end of console transition windows are always full with all kinds of Mario stuff. There's usually just a lot to sort of distract you from that fact, which we don't have here. But what we do have is not only some Mario titles that look a lot better than your Mario versus Donkey Kongs, or frankly, even your Thousand Year Doors, but then you also have what for me is the game in Metroid Prime 4, and obviously I can't wait for Zelda either. So I'm feeling a lot brighter about things. There was no Pikmin 4 DLC. I will not give up the Pikmin 4 DLC point until Pikmin 5 comes out. Yeah, because we did talk about it, but we got basketball and Nintendo Switch Sports. If that can happen, I can get Pikmin 4 DLC. So
well, the difference is Switch Sports is a successful game.
Oh, I'm going to start swearing and ruin your monetization at the last minute.
Tucker, what about you?
This Direct was the best case scenario for me, because I had... Not only because the first half of the year, I think, was, in my opinion, one of the weakest. I think it's the weakest period of Switch. And I played so little games, and I was expecting the second half of the year, because my expectations had been set by the conversation, and yes, by someone like, I don't know, spitball, like Botox Games, predicting things like, oh, it's going to be like, maybe a Kirby spinoff.
No, Kirby's
Fire
crazy.
Emblem remake. Yeah, that is true. Kirby spinoff, Fire Emblem remake, Hyrule Warriors, Mario Party. That was what my mind was set in. And then very good looking Mario Party. And of course, that's Mario Party. That kind of a wash between the two. But new 2D Zelda and new Mario and Luigi completely changes my tune on this year having things of like meaningful substance. And also in both those areas, 2D Zelda and Mario and Luigi, giving the Switch an original entry in both those series. It just continues to make the Switch's library more and more well-rounded. There are so many areas where they're like, we're doing both new 2D Mario and new 3D Mario. We're doing both new 3D Zelda and new 2D Zelda, new 2D Metroid, new 3D Metroid, new Mario RPG and Paper Mario, new Mario and Luigi. Like, they are just filling in all the gaps. Almost all the sports have been covered. So this is again best case scenario for me. And I also do think something I mentioned to Abram earlier, this is not necessarily the end of the published titles that Nintendo could put out in the year 2024. It's very possible that we get another Kirby Dream Buffet style announcement and release, just on Twitter, and then released a couple weeks later. It's very possible that something shadow drops in a September Direct, which I absolutely think there will be a September Direct. I think there has to be, now that Prime 4 is not this year and Zelda is releasing a couple weeks after that Direct would have happened. I think this makes this a good year, especially because Zelda is there. I still think it's one of the weakest years of Switch, but that's okay. It just means that this year is actually pretty good, and then next year will be really, really, really good. So I'm happy to coast on just a new good-looking Mario Party and new Mario and Luigi and new 2D Zelda. Oh well.
Right. It is interesting. Like, I can imagine a scenario for a lot of these hardcore Mario fans that are really in that universe fandom, right?
Christ.
This could maybe be their favorite year of the Switch, to be honest. Like, that's how good this year still was for what is the Switch's last full final year. I mentioned it in my video yesterday that this Direct would have been perfect if Fire Emblem had been here. Like, all of this plus Fire Emblem, I think this might be like a contender for my favorite Direct of all time.
Yeah.
We just needed that one more game to release this year, but like I said earlier, I still think a September Direct where they shadow drop Prime 2 or 3 or something else entirely could happen, and that will fill up this year to being not one of the best years of Switch for me personally, but certainly in the upper echelon of this 8-year-long life cycle. So I was very impressed with this Direct. Very happy as a creator also, just to have a lot to talk about. Yeah. After, I cannot stress how many times I've used that damn Luigi's Mansion 2 HD trailer.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of looking at it. I'm excited to play that game.
It was the 1,000-Year Door trailer. It was like that shot where he goes up the stairs and the one where he turns into a paper airplane. I'm like, I see this in so many Bo videos. I can't. I've seen this in my sleep.
But that said, thank you all so much for watching. Of course, you can subscribe to these two boys over on Backlog Banter. They did their own discussion on this Direct, so if you want to hear even more thoughts, definitely check out their video. And of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo Switch news, reviews, discussions, all of that fun stuff. And until next time, bye-bye!